We're getting ready to start our Friday webinar. Welcome. We're going to be getting started right now, and you should be able to see my screen. Now, what we're showing you right now is our standard view. This is our standard website, which you've seen on my previous webinars, how we present property information on a standard desktop. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to take a look at how this information looks on our standard screen. And then we're also going to be looking at our, our mobile version of the same site to see some of the features that you have an advantage of when you're looking for deals in your target area. So for instance, if you're looking at my screen right now, you'll see that I've logged in. You'll see that I'm at my welcome screen, and I select property search here on the lower right or on the left-hand side. So if I select property search, then there I'm at my property search screen on the website. Okay, so now again, this is our desktop version of the site. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and open up our mobile version of the same site. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go up here and I'm going to open up a second tab. I'm going to go over to my bookmarks. Excuse me, not there. I'm going to go to my, get out of there. I'm going to go to my bookmarks and I'm going to select my mobile site. So notice if I select mobile.county records research, then it allows me to log in this way. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to log in just like I would on the other site. And I'm going to hit submit. Now, some of you have said to me that you don't like the CAPTCHA feature that we have on the standard site. You'll notice it's not here. So if you have any issues with the CAPTCHA, just remember you can go through our web-based or our mobile app, and now I'm in. Okay, so this is my mobile application, and I've got my various tabs. So now in the mobile version, I can select my nearby option, or I can select my standard search. Now if I go to my standard search, you'll notice that I have both the option of the general property search and the single property search, very much like our standard site. But you'll notice in the standard site, singles here and generals here. On our mobile site, generals here on the left and singles on the right. Now, my single search allows me to search by street number, by street name, by parcel number, by trustee sale number. Now, I must tell you, this single property search is a great feature on our other site, on our main site, because it allows me to research into the background history on properties, and that's the main thing I use that for. But I noticed something when I was playing with the mobile version of the site, is that when I've got this set up, now we're on Warner, W-A-R-N-E-R, and I'm going to type that in here, in Huntington Beach, which is in Orange County. So I'm going to select my county. Now notice my county selection is slightly different. And I just scroll down and I'm going to select Orange County by checking the little box. And then I'm going to say done. Okay, so now Orange County is selected. I've typed in Warner as my street name. And now if I hit search, what it's going to do, it's going to give me properties on Warner. Now, what's different about this feature is on this page, notice I've got my search found 100 results all on Warner, going from PCH all the way into the Santa Ana area. Okay, so now notice if I do the same search on the website, I'm going to get a list. Oops. Oops. So lesson learned, I got to make sure I pick my county, don't I? So we always learn our own lessons as we teach. So remember, we all learn by doing, don't we? So now I did my search and I've got my list of addresses on Warner. Now notice these are segmented by dates. Every time you do a search in the single search, you have added dates on the right-hand side, and you'll notice that it always descends from the most recent. So here's a property on Warner in Santa Ana that's set to go to auction on March 1st, and it was added on the 16th of February, so this is a fairly recent record. You'll see some others here that were added in 2015 that are scheduled to go to auction, and these are right near our office. Okay, so 6600 Warner, 4561, all Warners, okay? But notice we've got Huntington Beach, we've got Santa Ana, and as I scroll down, my added dates go earlier in time all the way down to 2011, and these are all sale notices. From our previous presentations, you know a sale notice has a sale date. So every one of these records has a sale date. Okay, so the NTS sale date is indicating of a notice of sale. Once we get down to where that column is vacant and there's nothing there, these are default records. So this property at 1400 Warner, this is a notice of default for unit number 39. So these are default notices because there's nothing in the sale notice column. So that's how we differentiate the two in this report. In this report, I have the same properties. As you can see, I got a nice long list of properties here, and these are grouped in groups of 40. And you'll notice the 40 that I have listed here below, each has a little icon in the map. Now, I've got my desktop computer that I'm using for the demonstration, but if I go ahead and click on the plus and the minus sign here as if I'm using a touchpad, then I can zoom out and in by pressing on these buttons. Okay, so I can zoom out and I can zoom in. Okay, I can also put my mouse cursor, or if I'm using a touch screen, I can move the map around. All right, now also notice that if I choose, if I go below the map and it says search found 100 results, I can go to the next 40 by clicking on this button. Okay, so now I'm on the next group of 40. Nice long list. Now each of these is a property profile, and each of these profiles I can enter by hitting the little arrow button on the right hand side. Okay, so now these are my pointed out opportunities of what's available for me to go ahead and try and purchase. So now here's a property on Warner Avenue. This is unit number 302, and I did a search by street name. So I don't know exactly when this hit my system unless I look up some more details. So I'm going to go to property details. Okay. And so now I can see the estimate of value, and I can see that this is a single unit, this is a condo. And let me see what the deeds of trust are. So I've got a first of 448 and a second of 112. And this first is the one that's foreclosing. That's why we have the red star on the loan. Now, the status, this says back to beneficiary. Now, notice my listed date. So this is an older record. Just as we have records that go back to 2011 on this report, it's the same list. It's just broken up in a different pattern. So what I found fascinating about this search is that I'm able to set up a search along a certain street name, and then if I want to run a path on that street, then I can go and approach each of these properties along the road. Okay, now if I go back to my search page, I can get right back to this search page and I can select a different kind of search. Now that was a single property search and I put in Warner. You can see my Warner is still there. A different way that I can do a search in this is I could select a general property search like I did, like I normally do on the website, and I could select notice as a default and then pick my listed date range, or I could pick notices of sale. Notice my options here. I've got upcoming sales, I've got notices of default, I've got new REOs, lender owned, if I want to see properties that just went back to the lender. These are the same features that I have if I'm on the main site. Okay, so you'll notice that the options are the same. It just has a slightly different look because this is my mobile application. But there's something else. I can go ahead and I can switch from my search option to my nearby option, and this is where it gets really interesting. The nearby feature allows me to search properties based on a proximity to myself. Now, I'm demonstrating this for you in our on my desktop, but the application works fantastic if I'm using it in a mobile device like my phone or my tablet. So notice when I pick my nearby function, um, I've already had Orange County picked before, but I'm using my nearby function, so it's going to be basing my search on the proximity to me. So this works if you're in the county, one of the counties that you're subscribing to, and you're picking the properties that are nearby, and the system goes by your GPS location. So now what I can pick is I can pick any of these options from notice of default, notice of sale, properties that have sold to third-party bidders, or properties that have sold to lenders. Now, if I pick notice as a default, notice that it immediately asks me, well, how close do you want them to be? Okay, do I want them to be within a mile, within 5, within 10, within 20? So notice I can set my goals based on what's available to me. So let's say, for instance, now I'm based in Huntington Beach, so the center of my map is going to be where I am, and the same would be true for you if you're in your car. Or if you're at a meeting location, or if you meet with a group of your team of investors at a specific location that you've singled out as a starting point, and you just simply want to work a neighborhood. So the key to this is it gives me the ability to create a map around myself. So now I'm going to say I want to see something within 5 miles. Okay. Now it immediately gave me a map of properties that are at the notice of default stage within 5 miles of me. Now it immediately gave me 15 results. Okay, now each of these is a notice of default. And the first one that I see is on Edgewater Lane in Huntington Beach. Now notice that I can use this list, which is fine, but the beauty of this is I can also use the map. So watch this. So here's this property on Edgewater Lane in Huntington. And I'm going to say, you know, it's right by the harbor. That looks interesting to me. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select it. Now, once I click on the little balloon, you notice how it opens up a little dialog box for me that gives me the actual property description. It gives me the address, the zip code, the lot size, the square footage, and then it gives me the date it got listed. This was listed as an NOD on the 19th, so this is today's. This is fresh, okay? So these are going to be some really fresh leads that I can go and I can approach. And because I picked the location, now let me show you where I'm at. I'm right at Warner at Bolsa Chica. We're right here. Okay, we're right here. Okay, so all these properties are within 5 miles of that location. So now notice again, this dialog box is still open. I'm going to select View Profile. And here's what my profile looks like for this notice of default record. So this is really cool. Watch this. First of all, let's assume that I've got a mobile device or a laptop or a tablet, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on Zoom In. And that's going to take me in real tight. So notice it's got Edgewater Lane here. This is the bay here, the harbor, right? Here's Edgewater Lane. So this is a property that's opposite the houses that have slips on the harbor. Okay. Now what I can do is I can select the satellite view, and then I can zoom in a little bit more. So now we can see what the property looks like. Interesting layout here. It looks like they actually have 2 driveways. So this might be one that's got a circular driveway that follows inside. I'd have to get close to see what it really looks like. But you'll notice that I've got a good picture from this point of view. Now also notice that above the plus and minus signs, I've got the option to kind of spin my view around. So now notice that that is an A-frame roof, and then it looks like flat roof around it, kind of an odd style. And then it looks like they've got this kind of tarpaulin um, uh, patio area in the back. So I can continue my spin and kind of see it from a little different angle. So it is kind of an interesting house. It looks like it's very an unusual design, custom, because you'll notice the houses on either side, nothing looks identical to it. This one's kind of close. All right, so now I have a general idea of what the property itself looks like. If I want to go over to my street view, I can click on street view. Okay, so there's my street view of the property. So again, kind of an odd setup because it looks like we have two garages. So looks like you know how most people have a double car garage. It looks like we have two single car garages with an entryway in between. A very unusual layout. Okay, but I got to tell you, you know, sometimes when we're looking at properties, that's what attracts us to something, is we find something that is unusual. So maybe this is, you know, he's got a boat garage and a car garage. Who knows? Who knows? Now, with this particular opportunity, we can switch back to our map view by simply hitting that little arrow button there to the left. Notice I just got out of the street view by clicking that little option there on the upper left, and I'm back to my overhead, and then I can select map, and I'm back to my map perspective. Okay. Now also notice that there's the layout of our profile is a little different in this look, because I have my basic description of the property. Now there's no status on this one because this is a notice of default. The trustor is Michael and Roland. And then we have the owner is the Michael, it's a trust that looks like Michael Dennis Paul Trust. So it looks like Michael is the owner of the property. So that's who I'd make my offer to. Now we have a delinquency of 47,000. And then if I go down further in the profile, I just, to move it further, I select these buttons. Remember, this is a mobile app. So I'm going to select my trust deeds. I'm going to select my property details. I'm going to select my property tax section. Notice this is very much like the regular site. And then I have a section for my notes. Okay. So now I can close up any of these sections as needed. I still have my link to the tax collector's website, just like on the regular site. But I have all this information that's necessary for me to review these properties, but I can do so from a small handheld device. So now this particular property is, again, a notice of default record. So I have my information on the loans. I have a star next to the loan that's delinquent. And so what we have is a foreclosing first that was originally written at 480, and they're behind by 47,000. Now, my system is telling me the property is worth about 1.1, and they have loans of about 880,000. So this looks like a reasonable opportunity to approach these folks and make an offer subject to the existing loans and see if I can buy the property for about, I don't know, 900,000. And see if they're willing to do a deal. If this place is really worth 1.1 or more, then that's good to know. Now notice that underneath that area, there's the year built to the house is 64, and here's our estimate from Zillow. Let's see if it's listed. Okay, so now I've linked onto Zillow. Notice it's the same property picture in here, and Zillow has a little map up on top. All right, and you've got some other views on Zillow. So these look like similar to our other picture, except ours, I think ours is a little nicer in terms of what it looks like from the front. And if I scroll further down a couple of points, Zillow says the house is worth about $1,046,000. So the Zillow estimate actually is lower than our estimate of value. So I would keep that in mind. Remember, when we're going to make an offer on a property, comps matter, and we're always going to grab the lowest comp possible if we're making an offer. Now, I'm going to go and look at my price history, I just want to see if they've listed the property recently. Now, what we see is that the property was listed, but not by the homeowner. You'll notice auction.com is identified here. So this tells us that this property was set to go to auction based on the loan, and it was set to go to auction in 2014. So this is not their first time that they've been in arrears on this note. Okay, so they were in arrears back in 2014. It looks like the property was originally purchased back in 2000. So now we know they bought it in around 2000, July of 2000, and that they tried to, and that auction.com had the property ready to sell in 2014, about a year and a half ago. Now I'm going to go ahead and get out of that by just hitting my back arrow, and I'm back at my profile. Okay, so now we are back at our profile. Now notice it did close a few things up. So I want to go back and just look at my my property details. And again, I emphasize, we say it's worth 1.1. Zillow says it's worth $1 million even. So if I'm going to go in with any comps, I'm going to go in with the lower comps to make my offer on the property. And I'm going to try and make my offer and get Michael, who is the owner. Actually, I'm going to see who is in charge of the Michael Paul Dennis Trust, because it's the trust that has the decision to make. Now, there's an officer of the trust. There's a decision maker who runs that trust. Now, obviously, they're not minding their fiduciary duty because they're not making payments on the loan, right? They're in foreclosure. However, we've got an equity position, and if I really want a house by the harbor, I can make an offer. Okay, so now notice that right above the map in this profile, I can hit back to nearby, and I'm right back at my list of properties. So again, the key to the nearby feature is that I'm getting my opportunities that are right nearby. Now notice right down the street from that property is a property on Running Tide. If I click on that little balloon, then that opens this little dialog window here, and I can click View Profile here. Okay, now this works everywhere. So you're not limited to just this particular area. I'm limited to this particular area because it's nearby. And I'm using the nearby function that's using the GPS location from my computer. So now notice this property, this is on an island in the center of the harbor, very nice preferred location. And now in this case, Dan and Kristen Wynn are the trustors. They're the ones who borrowed the money. They're also the people on title. Now, this is, I saw this one earlier, so I know this is a delinquent amount on an HOA lien. If I go ahead and select my deeds of trust, this is just how it's going to look in terms of the loan breakout on our other page. But what you're going to notice here in terms of the profile is that, again, that the amount for the loan is 0 because this is an HOA foreclosure. This is an HOA lien. Now, this HOA is owed $4,714. And if I go down to my property details, I just want to make a judgment call on the market value of the home. So again, this is right on an island in the harbor, very preferred location. They seem to owe about $640,000 on a house that's worth over $1 million. So that says buy me. That says that this is a situation. If they're not paying their HOA, obviously there's something going on, and maybe this is an opportunity for me to go make an offer to them. Again, I can click my link to Zillow to see if it's listed. Now, Zillow says the place is worth twice what we said it was worth. Now, I got to tell you, every comp is its own double-edged sword. Sometimes a comp is way high, sometimes a comp is way low. Sometimes a comp applies exactly, sometimes it's just so far off that you don't want to use it. Bottom line is this: we look for comps in the area, we try and find something similar. So maybe this is comping to another property in the area that's gorgeous, and maybe this house is not as pretty. Okay, so whenever we look at our opportunities, now I'm just centering on the property, I'm zooming in, right, and I'm hitting my satellite view and zooming in further. So this is not bad. This is not a bad little house on the island. Now, if I kind of spin my view, you might say that's nice, You might say that's worth $1 million, maybe $1.2 million. You know, would you say that's worth $2 million? I don't know. I don't know. That's a good question. Now, let's go down a little bit here to the property details. And it looks like the house itself is 3,186 square feet and the lot's 6,350. Nothing really stellar about that. Okay, so this might be a nice million plus house. I don't know if you would say that this is really a $2 million home. That's a good question, and that's a question that you have to answer for yourself, because, you know, there's a very true saying, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? Now, the question is, what can I sell it for? And then that feeds the question of what I should pay for it, because my business model will determine what I should do next. Okay, so now this particular property, I visited the profile, I've seen my trust deeds, I can see that this is a third, it's a 0, so I know that's an HOA lien. I've got a pretty good idea from Zillow that there's kind of a discrepancy about market value with properties on the island. Now notice I can zoom out on the island, and I might find that there are properties right nearby, like, you know, let's say this one over here on the corner, you know. Now what about that one? That one that it's got its own private dock and looks palatial. I'll bet you that one's probably a $2 million home. This one that's got some interesting custom design work. Here's another one, custom design work. Look at the size of these boats on these private docks. You know, these people, these are probably the $2 million homes. And if they're apples to apples with this, or apples to oranges, excuse me, with the other property, then it would make this one appear to be worth a lot more, and that would throw our comp off on something like Zillow. So just be aware as you're checking properties out, we want to make sure that we are not taking an apples to orange comparison and going and offering too much to buy a property. I mean, once you're in escrow, you can recheck your comps. Okay, and you can come back and say, oops, I was mistaken. I didn't mean to offer you $1.5 million. I meant to offer you 900,000. So be it. But just remember, you want to have a fair idea of what you're offering before you step into trying to put a deal together, because I certainly wouldn't want to close my escrow and then discover that I offered too much for the property. Okay, because again, the seller's not going to say, hey, I think you're offering me too much. They're just going to be delighted. All right, so always make sure you're checking your market values. Always make sure you're doing your estimations and then following it up with a thorough inspection of the property, and of course checking for clear title. Now, I'm going to get out of this record by clicking my back to nearby page, and that again, it takes me to my list of properties, and this is my 15 results that I found based on notice of default. Now notice that I can zoom in a little tighter, and again, what I'm using is I'm using the plus sign, and then I'm using my my point of contact with the mouse. You could be doing this with your fingertip if you're using a touch screen. So here's a property that's on Crest Avenue, right near a park, and this is closer to downtown and the Huntington Beach Pier. So if that's an area that you wanted, you'd put your cursor over that particular balloon, select it, and click on that profile. Okay, so now I've opened this profile, and then I can zoom in tighter. Once I'm in tight enough, then I can hit my satellite view. And I looked at this one a little bit earlier, and I thought this looks quaint. It's a nice big house. And if I want to see what it's talking about in terms of property details, that this is 3,265 square feet, 12,000 square foot lot. Now this lot's twice the size of that other property that we just looked at, that I thought was a little bit overvalued. Okay, now this is telling me that the value on this one is about 1.3. If I bounce over to Zillow, Zillow says 1.3 as well. Now here we get that front view. This is a pretty place. This is It looks a lot more impressive than that one by the harbor, doesn't it? That one by the harbor just looked like a regular house. This one has a fairly impressive amount of curb appeal. And you can see that they've put a lot into this property. Now it's right across the street from a park. It really looks elegant. If you look at this, and it's really made to show. So this is an impressive property, and you can tell that someone's really tried to market this property well. Look at all these pictures. You know, you can see exactly what you're getting. This is what you'd look for if you really wanted to get an idea of a property, especially one that we know is in default, and to figure out if it's worth chasing. Because now I got a lot of information on this property. Now notice I'm scrolling down to see the price history. Now the reason I'm doing this is I want to get a good idea of what's going on. Now what do we have here? We have a property that was listed for rent last year, and it appears that the rental listing for $9,500 a month, it appears that the rental listing was just pulled in January. Okay, so January 11th, they pulled the listing. So that's interesting. Now I'm going to hit my back arrow and go back. Now, so in January, a month prior to the date it posted on our website, the rental listing was pulled. Now, what else do we know? We know that Michael Fennell is the trustor, and it looks like David and Nancy Fennell are the owners. So this is interesting. So looks like this is all in the family, and the family's had this property listed as a rental or income property, and they just pulled it because, of course, the notice of default was coming out. Now, they haven't listed it for sale, so that's an opportunity for me to approach them directly and offer to buy the property. Now, you'll notice that there's two loans on the property, one for 1.3 and one for 250,000. So they owe a total of about $1,600,000. And you'll notice that on this first loan, the one that's foreclosing, that's our red star, there's a delinquency of $126,732. So that's missed payments. $126,000 in missed payments. Let's ballpark it and say that their monthly payments are about $10,000 a month, or let's call it 95. Let's call it 9,000, because they were trying to get $9,500 a month in rent on that listing that they had in Zillow. So let's say that it's 9,000 and they were trying to clear $500 a month profit and have the renter pay that 9,000. So the bottom line is it took a while to hit 126,000 in arrears. Okay, we're talking about a year's worth of missed payments, it looks like. Okay, so now what we can tell from that is these people are in a situation where they're treading water. They tried to rent the property. Lovely home, lovely home. So it sounds like they're trying to save ownership by renting it out, but they were treading water, and now they're hitting a hard point. Now, it appears that they owe about 1.6, and appears it's worth about 1.3. We're talking short sale territory here. Now, so I could be prepared to make a short sale offer today and try and buy the property by taking it through an escrow if I knew I could come in with funding. This is a gorgeous home. I would come in with a short sale offer if I could afford it and if I wanted this property, and I would just be prepared to come in, and I do want to make it as attractive as possible. I'm going to check their price again from Zillow because I forget. Okay, so Zillow was at 1.3, that's right. So if the comps are running 1.3 and they owe about 1.6, then I'm prepared to come in at about maybe 1.1. Okay, now I'm just saying that because reasonably, if the comps are 1.3 and someone can afford it and they open up the pictures on this house, this is a lovely home. Okay, this is not a hard sell. It's a huge lot, well done. not a hard sell at all, and you can tell they put a lot of loving effort into it. So if I could get it for sub 1.3, enough for me to make my profit on it, then this one might be worth going after. Okay, so I would consider making an offer directly, and if I can't pick it up directly that way, then this might end up going to auction. At auction, the lender might open the bid at about $1 million. Okay, so my goal is to get it for about $1 million. Okay, if I'm going to make an offer and close an escrow and own it in 30 days, I'm willing to bump it up so that I'm getting it faster. But if I'm going to wait until the auction, then I'm understanding that I'm probably going to get a better price because I'm going to have to pay cash. And if I'm going to have to pay cash, then I want a better price. So I'm always willing to pay a little bit more if I can come in with funding versus having to step up at the auction and whip out a cashier's check for $1 million. Okay. Now, if I go back to my nearby page, notice that I'm right back at my map. And now this is a list with the map that allows me to search by proximity. Now, this is noticed as a default. I can always go back to my nearby page and I can select upcoming trustee sales instead, and then I can pick my range. I'm going to pick 5 miles again, and notice how it populated this report. Notice also the last report was about 15 properties. This is about 30. This is about what I'm seeing on average when I do a search for a certain parameter in the market today, and I'm noticing that I'm for the most part I'm seeing that there's about twice as many properties headed towards the auction as there are notices of default that are newer foreclosures. And that's simply because the lenders themselves have been allowing the notices of sale to pile up. Okay, it's kind of like if you ever go river rafting, or if you ever go hiking along a river, you'll notice at the bend of the river you'll kind of find this mountain of little pebbles where the river curves and bends. And so what you've got in the terms of the foreclosure marketplace is that you've got this group of properties where the river bends, where the lenders have given people postponements, they've given people modifications. Most of your modifications wind up right back in default. Most of your postponements do not solve the situation unless someone approaches these homeowners and offers to buy the property. The bottom line is this: the property is going to sell one way or another. Okay, now notice with my proximity, these are all properties that are near me, and I'm starting from the same starting point right here at Warner and Bolsa Chica. So here's a notice of sale for a property that's on Warner. Now, notice that this has a unit number. It says apartment 306, so that's a condo. Okay, so notice there's another property over here by the ocean, and this is on Portofino Circle. Now, that doesn't have a unit number, but I'm wondering if that's a house or a condo. I'm not sure. Now, the lot size is only 4,590, and the house size is 2,814. Notice that's a much smaller house than those other ones that we saw on the inner part of the harbor by the island. And notice that this one, now this hit our list on the 2nd of February. Now it's got a very small lot, so let's view the profile and see what's going on with this property. Okay, now look at the image here seems like some long skinny homes. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to zoom in. Now again, I'm going to use the cursor button, and then I'm going to center a little bit, and then I'm going to hit my satellite option. So now these look like these are newer properties. These look like somebody tried to squeeze these properties in. So let's take a look more of the property details. Okay, and I've got a year built. Now this is 85, so they're not as new as I thought. But you notice that they're being very conservative of space here. You've got very small lots, okay? And if I do my little circle, yeah, it doesn't look like they got much of a yard back there, does it? Now they're right on the park, So they don't need that big a yard, I would assume, because they've got a park right behind them. Okay, and of course they've got the harbor right here. So it is a really nice spot. This is a nice setup. Okay, I'm going to have to assume, based on this layout, that you've got an HOA. It looks like you've got townhomes right here. So I'm going to assume you're part of an HOA community here. This is rather restricted space because you'll notice that this is a walkway that ends abruptly right here. So this is a very restricted space. If you came around this way and thought you were going to get all the way around the harbor, you're in for a rude awakening once you reach this point right here, because you're going to have to go back around. Okay, so now this particular property, we have a foreclosing first, 1.4 million taken out in 2006. Now, Arthur and Joyce Smith are the borrowers. Now, it looks like I have an Irina O'Neill as the owner, completely different name. Now, whenever you see something like that, we have to assume that Irina bought the property subject to this existing 06 loan. That's similar to the acquisition method that we recommend when you make an offer subject to an existing loan. Of course, we also make sure that we recommend that you do so conservatively, because it's one thing to take over an existing loan. It's another thing to take over someone else's problem. Okay, because what we don't want to do is take over a situation that's going to wind up blowing up in our face. Now, in this particular case, we have a property that has an auction pending, and this auction is set for the 29th, and the amount owed to the lender here is $2,080,675. So let's walk that back. We have a loan that's 10 years old for $1,480,000, and at the moment they're owed over $2 million. So what does that tell me? It tells me that the property went over to Irina O'Neill. And where's our purchase date on this property? We should have a purchase date under our property details of January of 2014. Now, this is interesting. So Irina took the property over not long ago. They had been in default for an extended period of time. So we have an odd situation here. So Irina took over the property, probably didn't make a payment after she took it over. And the bottom line is this: these people are going to need to lose this property to the trustee sale unless you can get a short sale approved. You don't have a lot of choices here. This particular lender, they're owed 2.8. They're owed $2,080,000, and they've been extremely patient with this circumstance. If they can take it to auction, I sure would. Now, we could assume that there's going to be an opening bid that's going to be attractive to a potential buyer. I've got a market value of about 1.5. Let's see if they've got this listed with an agent yet. No, they don't. It looks like it's scheduled to go to auction. Now, whenever you see an auction reference here, that's probably going to be auction.com, because I'm on Zillow. Okay. Now, this does say it's been listed for sale. So this is interesting at $1,053,053. So they have tried to list the property for auction, and it looks like it's actually gone through the auction process in the past. So this has got some interesting history behind it. Whenever you see a situation like this, you need to evaluate it. Take a shot at getting the property, and if you have any doubts as to what's going on with the circumstances, don't bid at auction unless you're sure. Okay, now in this particular case, if I was going to buy this one at auction, I would double check and make sure, because notice I just saw that it said it sold at the foreclosure auction in 2012. So if it sold in 2012, why on earth would I have a loan that's foreclosing that was written in 2006, because it sounds like they got the auction overturned and returned back to the original homeowner. Okay, what that tells me is that these people fought the foreclosure process, they fought the auction, maybe they filed bankruptcy at the very last moment right before that 2012 auction took place. Now, that tells me that if I did some more research in our system, I'd find more out about this particular property. So I might turn around and take this property's information and look it up on our single property search. Now, that's not something I'd necessarily do on this site. What I would do is I'd say, okay, this is 3175 Portofino. I'm going to go to my regular site and I'm going to do a single property search by the address number and look at how many times Portofino comes up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now I gotta tell you, when you got a property that comes up in the system this many times, you've got somebody that's pretty darn good at what they're doing, aren't they? So what we have is somebody that's been able to stave off a foreclosure since early 2011. So they've been fighting this foreclosure off for 5 years, and they now owe $2 million on a property that's worth about $1.5 million. Okay, the lender themselves, I must tell you, is probably at the limits of their patience. I could probably get a short sale offer approved because they simply want these people out of the property. And it's possible that this new name, Irina O'Neill, that Irina's purpose in taking the property over in 2014, because again, we know she took the property over in 2014 because of the purchase date here, is that maybe she was a party to the bankruptcy filing to continue the process of delaying the foreclosure. Whenever you're dealing with these situations, you just got to weigh your circumstances and then get a better idea of what's going on. So would I negotiate with Irina? I probably would not. I would probably discover that talking to her would not be beneficial to me. Okay, I'd make an offer straight out. Either she takes it or she don't. Okay, and then I'd be prepared to bid on the property at the trustee sale if the price is right. And then knowing that I'm probably going to have to work to get Irina out, because again, they're very good. They've been fighting this off for a good 5 years. Now, if it goes to auction and it becomes an REO, then the loan will be wiped out. I can offer whatever I want to the lender who foreclosed on the property. So this particular property, we've got a fairly clear idea of what's going on. I'm going to hit my back to nearby page and notice I'm right back at my map, and I can just start working down my list. Now, some of these properties we're going to find more favorable than others. Here's one. This is on Mariner Drive. This is see, there's a unit number again. So that's number 2. That's a condo. If I want to know what that looks like, same thing. Just hit my view profile. Now that's a nice spot. Notice we're seeing some nice properties. We're seeing some nice spots. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Wow, it looks like I can rent a boat there. It looks like this is the boat rental place, doesn't it? Yeah, okay. So it looks like Surf City Boat Rentals. I'm guessing that the boat rental place is over here and not where the condos are. So these are some condos. Probably you're able to rent your own slips, so we have an idea of what's going on here. And what do we have here? We have Wasfi Shindy. All right, so so this is the Shindy house as opposed to the Haney place. So now we have the Shindy house here, and they're a trustee sale property. So let's see what the auction details are. This one's set for March 4th. Originally, they were scheduled for November 4th of last year. And it looks like the opening bid has not been announced. That's very common. Most of the time, your opening bid will not be called until the auction begins. The bank is owed about $798. Okay, and Let's see some from the property details what it's actually worth. So it's worth about $773. Now, this is an interesting point. If it's worth about what's owed, then the lender has to make a judgment call. It's very likely that what they're going to do is they're going to drop the bid. And when we say drop the bid, we mean the price point at the auction. So this lender could open the bid for $500,000. Okay, very straight out. When they drop the bid, it's because the lender's having to face the dilemma that for cash at the auction, an investor wants a deal. Okay, so in this particular case, if the lender says, you know what, it's worth about $770, well, let's see if the homeowner has decided. Oh, Zillow doesn't want to work with me on this one. So let's say that the homeowner has decided to list the property that would be listed, or if the lender has decided that they would like to get the property sold at auction, then they're going to have to take into account what you want and what I want. They're going to want to put a price on the property that's going to move it through the auction. Consider just like any retailer that has inventory that they want to move out of the supermarket or out of the car dealership. They're going to put a sale price sticker on that, and they're going to move it out. Manager's special. So if you look at something that's going to the auction where the lender wants to move it, then they might put a discounted price. They might open this one at auction for about $500,000. Likewise, if they were willing to sell it for that, then they might be willing to accept a short sale offer. Remember the key, if I make an offer and I want to buy a property for less than what is owed, that's a short sale. So if they owe $770 and I want the place for $5, I offer $5. If it's accepted by WASFI, then the lender has a say in the matter as well. The lender can say, okay, 500 will pay me off. Okay, and if that's the case, the deal gets accepted. We close our escrow. We own the property that way. Okay, now remember, that's why we look at these sale notice properties, not necessarily to buy at the auction, but to see where the opportunities lie. Okay, now here's one that's on Fanwood. Okay, now we haven't looked at that one yet. Notice we're just going by proximity. Now this one on Fanwood is Gary and Carolyn, and it's the Gary Smith Trust. So they put the property in the name of a trust. Now notice, I'm just going with proximity. I'm going to properties that are nearby. So here we have a property that's worth about $800,000. Okay, and it looks like they owe about $1 million. So I already know this is a short sale if I'm going to make an offer to Gary and Carolyn. If I look at the trust deeds, then I can see if it's going to go to auction that they have a first that was $633, but what do they owe for the auction details? What's the amount owed on the loan? $900,000. Wow, wow. So bottom line is this: I'm hoping for a discount at the auction, or I'm going to make a short sale. There's no subject to opportunity here. So if you're trying to make subject to offers, which is of course what we recommend to anybody that's getting started in the business, you want to make offers subject to existing loans where you can afford it, okay, or where it makes sense based on what they owe. So now, if I'm looking for auction equity, then I could use the function where I do searches on the main site. And then what I'm doing with that is I'm doing searches where, let's say for instance, I do upcoming sales, and let's say that I just want to look in my target area and I want to see what their auction equity figures are. Then I might just look at these numbers. Okay, so I got a group of 325 properties set to go to auction in the next 2 weeks by not using my nearby feature. Okay, now what I could do is if I wanted to combine the two efforts, then I can do a search of my Huntington Beach area. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to say, let's focus on this same area, but we're going to do a polygon. Okay, now I just left clicked, and I'm going to go left click. Notice I just made a line, left click, and now I just made a trapezoid. I'm just going to finish it up by hitting close poly shape. Notice my polygon there. Okay, now upcoming sales, date range 219 to 34. Nothing's changed, but I had like a huge number before, right? Watch me hit search polygon and let's see what I get. 31. Now notice my grouping. It's very similar to what I just got on my nearby, isn't it? Okay, because I was using this shape in determining this grouping. Now, so now this is a grouping that's similar to my nearby, but I used the polygon shape instead. Okay, and then what I'm doing is I'm noticing with 31 records. Now, first of all, in this group, in this map, I can pick 40, and that way all 31's on the same report. Okay, and notice that I have an auction equity number. Now, first of all, I got to tell you, if I have a budget, I have a budget. Okay, this property on Morningstar Drive in Huntington, this is probably a gorgeous house. The estimated value is $2.4 million. Okay, the opening bid at auction was $2 million today. Nobody bid. Okay, what did I just say? We've got a budget, right? So this particular property, there was $400,000 in equity, but nobody bid. Now there's a $700,000 second just got wiped out, but I would have had to be at the auction this morning or this afternoon at 1:30 with $2 million. Okay, sorry, but you know, it was in my other suit. You know, you have to be ready for it, which is a really good case in point. When we look at our opportunities, we have to put our budget together. Now, with that in mind, notice that I can sort by estimated value. That one's still at the top, right? But now notice I can go down and I can find properties that have a smaller ticket price, okay? When I look at doing subject to offer opportunities, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for properties where the amount that I can take over is within the budget I can afford. For instance, if I've got $30K to spend to bring the loans current and close my escrow, I'm not going to go after the $2 million house. I just know it's not going to work. Okay, it's outside my budget. But this stuff down here, this is reasonable. I could take this stuff, you know. I could take an opportunity. Now, for instance, look at this one here on Warner in Huntington. This is set to go to sale next week. $10,000 opening bid on a second. It's a $240,000 house. They owe $140 ahead of the 10. That's $150. So now, if I spent $10,000 at the auction and took over payments on $140,000, it's probably gonna cost me about 10 grand to bring those loans current, but I'm gonna get a $240,000 property? That makes sense. That makes sense, and I can work within a small budget to do that, to get myself a 1-bedroom, 1-bath condo in Huntington that I can turn. So I'm gonna open up that profile. Notice how I can use both formats. I can use both the nearby function on the mobile format. So as I'm looking at properties in my vehicle, I can go back and forth and I can move within the parameters of my nearby functions to find the properties near me. But then I can also go back to my site and I can pull information up here where I can view it a little easier for someone like me who has eyes that are not so great. Now this one, I had a hunch this was the HOA association, and I'm right, this is an HOA lien. So the Villa Warner or Via Warner Condo Association, the one foreclosing on this particular property. Okay, so these are condos, but it's not bad. You've got a condo walking distance from the beach. Okay, $140,000 first. The HOA is owed 10 grand. David Garland is the owner. So now David lives on Golden West. It looks like he's got a house on Golden West. This is an income property. He's been renting this out. This is a beach pad. He's been renting it out as a beach pad, and he's not been paying the HOA. So bottom line is this. I can make an offer to David. Here's his address right here. I can go make an offer to him on Golden West to take over the payments on the property. See if he's willing to just be shed of the property. If he can't afford it, he can't afford it. Now, if I wanted to double check and find out if the first is ever foreclosed, I take the parcel number and I do a search by parcel number. Notice this single property search comes into play again. Okay, so now it looks like he got into arrears back in March of last year. Notice it's the second each time it's the HOA lien, so the first has never foreclosed on him. So this might be good. He just might be sloppy, but he might be falling behind enough to where I can take advantage of the situation and buy the property. But also notice that now if I bid at the auction, then I will buy the property at the auction for $10,000. Okay, $10,222 is their opening bid, so I might get the property for 11. Now, the one drawback, and I'm going to leave you with this, is if you buy a property based on an HOA lien taking it to auction, that we have to wait 90 days, 3 months, before we can actually record a deed. We get a receipt from the auction, and then we have to wait 3 months because David has a chance to pay us back over time. But what would I do? Watch this. Notice that David owes the county taxes because his property taxes are delinquent since 2014. I'd pay the taxes. Then I'd contact the lender in first position, and I'd see how much to bring him current as the person who bought the property at the auction and see if they'll let me know. Bottom line is this: if I can talk to David first, I can get a lot of my facts first. Now, the fact that the first loan never foreclosed tells me that either they're current or they've been biding their time. Okay, now I could pull a copy of my first deed of trust, and then I could check to see what their terms are on that loan and who the lender is. And if David lets it go, if 90 days later I become the owner of the property, then absolutely I could take it over. You know, I could go over the day of the auction and find out this place is empty. So there are a lot of different things that can happen in the pursuit of our properties. The most important thing to know is that once we start our research, we need to put a plan together that makes sense to get the deal that we want. So would I go after this one? I might. I would do a little bit more research. I would do a little bit more checking. I would see if I can find out what's owed on this first loan. And I got to tell you, it's very likely that the HOA might know. Okay, and one of the things that I would look at and see if I can talk to the condo association, because if they take this to auction and they become the owner, then they're the ones that are going to have to bring that loan current. So here's my other option. What if it goes to auction and I missed the auction, so I didn't get it, and then the HOA becomes the owner of the property? Well, I can buy it from them. Okay, so pursue your properties, identify your targets, look at the different ways that you can possibly buy. If you have questions about how you should attack a particular property, because there's questions I still have on this one, okay, because I just looked at it. It's fresh in my mind. I would consider looking at this one further. I would first and foremost consider making an offer to David, because the simplest, easiest way to take possession of this property is to go to him and put an offer on the table that makes sense for both of you, okay? Because the bottom line is this, is we're here to make deals, we're here to save money, and if the guy that owns the property already is desperate, his best solution is to work with you and me. This has been Bob with County Records Research. This has been our Friday webinar. It is now the end of the presentation. It's 3:35 in the afternoon on February 19th. You have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend. Get out there and make some money.